Well, I didn't really know what to do with this request, so I know you're Snooker Loopy nuts, so here we go. Might as well, rather than just talking, I might as well try and sing it. So, Snooker Loopy nuts are we, me and him and them and me. We'll show you what we can do with a load of balls and a snooker cue. Pot the red, then screw back for the yellow, green, brown, blue, pink and black. Snooker Loopy nuts are we. We're all snooker loopy. Bum 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 bum.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Snooker Loopy podcast. This is in our brand new home. This episode on a brand new channel. There's going to be a video version of the podcast or the audio version in the same way. But you know that if you're here. Welcome to this brand new, exciting chapter of the Snooker Loopy podcast. My name is Tom Mayhew, I'm a comedian, and I'm here with my very, very good friend. He's a YouTuber, he's a snooker nerd, but most importantly, you know him as I know him, as Joe the Nugget Hannard.
Well, a very good evening, Hazel. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our new surroundings, and thank you for coming over with us, making the pilgrimage from Tom's channel all the way over to here. Hopefully you enjoy your stay, and if you are a new listener, then make sure you drop us a subscribe as well. We will be producing a lot more content around here, and it won't just be the podcast. There will be lots of little tidbits about, certain music from snooker's bygone era and little funny bits that we found over the years, and hopefully you will enjoy it and enjoy all of the content around here, because we're really excited to get going. I know lots of people have been in touch and telling us that they're excited as well, Tom.
Yeah, and it's really lovely to have something snooker related to be excited about, because today was that post-Crucible lull day, really, where you wake up and there's no snooker and you do feel a bit down. You kind of, I don't know about you, Joe, but every time when it's the day after the World Championship, I just find myself going, what am I going to do today? There's nothing to watch. There's nothing to look forward to watch in the evening. I have to message Joe about other things which aren't the World Championship, which is frankly tedious. Joe's like, oh, let me tell you about my real life. And I'm like, I don't care, Joe. Let's chat about the snooker. But It's exciting, of course, because we do have new plans for new snooker content from this podcast. We're not stopping because the World Championship is over. We're still going to be bringing out regular content, and we have the World Seniors coming up very soon. We'll be covering that. We hope you're all going to watch it on Channel 5, because it's exciting to have that on terrestrial TV. And there's a lot of exciting snooker things on the horizon. It's not just about the World Championship. We have the Q School, that's going to be coming up, and all the different tournaments. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to really look forward to. And the first thing to look forward to, of course, Joe, is right now, because it's our World Championship 2024 review.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big one today. We will be looking at in depth at all of the tournament, right from the qualifiers up to the big World Final that finished. You know, we're not going to spend hours on the qualifiers. We've already done that in a previous podcast. But you know, some stories that came through, because of course one of the big stories of this World Championship is how well the qualifiers performed.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. The best ever performance by qualifiers at Crucible. 3 qualifiers who got to the semi-finals. 8 qualifiers who won their first round match. There's 2 sides of the coin, really. It's either the best, well, it's both, I guess. It's the best ever Crucible campaign for the qualifiers, but it's also the worst ever Crucible campaign for the seeds. But part of that was because of the strength of the qualifiers, which me and Joe did cover in our preview of the qualifiers. We said about all the names in there, you know, the Jack Lisowski, Stuart Bingham, people like Neil Robertson who didn't even get through the qualifiers. Yeah. But that is how tough the competition is outside of the top 16, when even someone like Robertson doesn't make it.
Yeah, and it was statistically the strongest ever qualifiers. Obviously, the lowest ranked player was 45, I believe, with Dominic Dale, and of course the second lowest ranked player, Jak Jones, 44 in the world, I believe.
I think 45 was Robbie Williams.
Oh, was 45 Robbie Williams? Yeah, was Dominic Dale Dominic Dale must have been a bit higher than that then, was he?
I think, Dale, you're getting confused because you're thinking more that his age is over 45.
Yes,
that might be it.
possibly. But yeah, Jak Jones, I think, was number 44 in the world at the start of it. So that's bonkers, isn't it? That the second worst player in theory in the whole draw ended up getting to the final. Like, who would have believed that?
No one, mate. Absolutely no one. It was something like 150 to 1 before the tournament. Similar odds to Joe Johnson when he won back in 86. But Joe Johnson, even then, he was a seed. So a lot of people, ourselves included, have compared Jak Jones a bit to Joe Johnson in the surprise of him making it through. But Joe Johnson, at the very least, he was a top 16 player. And for Jak Jones, a guy who'd never even got past the semi-final. His only semi-final as well was in Gibraltar Open, which is one of the events that's renowned for the big players not turning up. You know, it's the kind of event where you might see Rod Lawler in the quarterfinals. So really, no disrespect to Rod, of course. We love Rod on the pod. Rod the Plod on the pod. We love him.
Hey, there you go. Already starting with the snooker puns, Tom, and we're only 5 minutes into our new channel podcast. People are turning off already, Tom. But yeah, fantastic lineup that came to the Crucible, and I believe, Tom, in our preview video, I said something like, I wouldn't be surprised if we had more qualifiers get through than seeds, and I was so close to that happening. It didn't quite happen, but next best thing, I think it equaled the record for the number of seeds to fall in round one, and just to name a few players that went out in round one. Of course, Ali Carter had a very good season. He went out 10-7 to Stephen Maguire. Mark Selby, of course, 4-time world champion, went out to his good pal Joe O'Connor. Zhang Anda, who's had the best season of his life, one of the top seeds on the 1 year list. He went out 10-4 to eventual runner-up Jak Jones. Ding Junhui, of course, UK finalist. He went out to Jack Lazowski. Probably had the worst draw of everyone, I think, Ding Junhui there. Gary Wilson, who was well tipped as an outside bet for the whole World Championship. He went out to Stuart Bingham. Barry Hawkins, former finalist, always good at the Crucible. He went out to Ryan Day. But I think the biggest shock of round one perhaps was Mark Williams, who had just won the Tour Championship, and he went out to Si Jiahui, who of course got to the semi-final back in 2023. But did you see that one coming? I know in our preview video we said it could be a bit tricky, but I'm not sure I've seen that coming.
I didn't. I really didn't. And I know that C had a fantastic run at the Crucible last year, so it's not like he was someone who's making their debut who might be intimidated by Willow, and it's not like he's someone who has never won at the Crucible, so would have that pressure. But just Williams' form had been so good, especially in that final, of course, of the final ranking event before the World Championship, which Joe went to, and Joe saw with his very eyes that Willow played Ronnie off the table, which very rarely happens ever in the history of snooker.
No, absolutely. So, Mark Williams, was absolutely outstanding, and I know Stephen Hendry had made a lot of noise over the last few months saying, I think Mark Williams could go very, very far in the World Championship, if not win it. And it just didn't happen for him. And obviously continues the Tour Championship curse. Obviously no player that has won the Tour Championship has gone on to win the World Championship. Now, it's only been going on since 2019, but that's now 6 Tour Championship winners that have not won the World Championship. So it's starting to make itself into a bit of a curse. And yeah, Mark Williams continues that trend.
The Tour Championship curse as a phrase is something I've only ever heard Joe use. It's not an official thing. There's no Wikipedia page
and
for the Tour Championship.
It will come true, don't you worry. It will be a thing. Give it 10 years when there's not even a Tour Championship anymore, probably. But hey,
to be fair, in 10 years, it's probably more likely we'll have a Tour Championship, but then it'd be at the Crucible at this rate. So
Yes, very true. I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto that at some point, but it wasn't all bad for the Seeds in round one. I think some of the standout performances actually came from the Seeds. John Higgins got through a very tough match against Jak Jones, 10-6. I was very impressed with that because that felt like a banana skin for him because, of course, Jak Jones beat Neil Robertson in qualifying. So I think people came into it thinking John Higgins could be in trouble here. Obviously, Kyren Wilson, eventual champion, 10-1 against Dominic Dale. We were, chomping at the bit to watch Dominic Dale at the Crucible, and it was very short-lived, wasn't it?
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, it was about as short-lived as most of his songs that he sings at the shootout.
Yeah. Not that Fionn knows anything about that, Tom.
No, Fionn got the extended 2-hour mix, which he absolutely loved.
Yes. I mean, I haven't heard from Fionn since. So those of you that aren't... Go on.
That will happen when you listen to 2 hours of Dominic Dale.
Yeah.
It does change a man, do you know what I mean? I could see it putting someone off snooker for life.
Yes, absolutely. For those of you that don't know, Fionn is one of our regular listeners, and he sent in his own version of Snooker Loopy for a feature that we do called Cue the Music, which we are going to showcase a little bit later on, where we look at a piece of snooker-related music. It could be a song, it could be anything, to be honest with you, and by the sounds of it, I think Tom's got a bit of a cracker for you today. But Fionn said, if I don't beat Joe Johnson's Everlasting Love with my version of Snooker Loopy, then I will listen to 2 hours of Dominic Dale non-stop. And he basically dug his own grave at that point, didn't he?
He did. He got very close. Everlasting Love scored an average of 8 from me and Joe. Fionn, I believe, got a 7.99.
Yes.
Very, very close. Unlucky, but that's the way it goes. They're the fine margins of the Snooker Loopy podcast.
It's a game of fractions. But there you go. So well done to Kyren Wilson for getting through that match. And he was looking back to his best then, and I think I said to you at the time, he's looking good. And with all the seeds gone, he'll be fancying his chances to win. And there you go, he did do it. But the big story was, of course, defending champion Luca Brissell going out in round one on the opening day. He was 9-6 up to David Gilbert and somehow ended up losing it. It was quite an unbelievable loss, actually, from that position. And I remember he only needed one snooker, I think, and he just gave up straight away and came out afterwards saying, quite happy I'm not world champion anymore.
Yeah, it was one of the most petulant losses of a world champion I've ever seen, really.
Yeah.
I think he was ill on the day. He did seem under the weather, and that would have probably contributed to him being a bit arsey, frankly. But yeah, it wasn't great, I think, for a lot of players who've never been the world champion. I'm sure would have watched that and gone, get over yourself a bit, mate, because he was a bit, a bit kind of just moany about, I don't like getting all the attention, and I don't want all this focus on me. And it's like, but that's what happens when you're a world champion. And also, you've had that attention since you broke through when you were 17. Like, it's not like you're an overnight sensation. You've achieved what all snooker players want to do, but you're complaining about it, which I felt was a bit ungrateful, really, of the fact he's won something, and because that thing gets attention, that's why he got 500 grand. If he got no attention, it's like, fine, mate, you can win it, but there's your 50 quid. Would you be happy with that? I doubt it. I don't think you would be.
Yeah, it was bizarre because a lot of people were tipping Luca to be a bit of a Joe Johnson and come through and maybe even reach the final again, especially when you looked at that top half. And other than Mark Allen, there wasn't a lot of players in good form in the top half. So it was there for the taking almost from Luca Brissell, and the winner did come from the top half. So maybe it was a missed opportunity for somebody like a Luca Brissell to get through. Streaky players, as I like to call them, but yeah, it didn't happen. It wasn't to be, and that was round one. What was your standout moment of round one?
Well, I think my standout moment probably, at the time at least, was the much fancied world number one, Ronnie O'Sullivan, who, of course, demolished Jackson Page 10-1. And everyone thought Ronnie's going to win this because he was playing so well.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the only frame that Jackson Page won, he won it with a break of 1-4-2, which ended up being the joint highest break of the tournament. That's definitely never happened before. That's really making the most of your one chance, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Page didn't play it particularly well, but there just seemed to be an air of focus around Ronnie O'Sullivan, a bit of a bubble. He'd come in with very different attitude to what he had previously. You know, he seemed very up for it. And yeah, it was ominous signs, I think, with the amount of seeds falling. It looked like all of the cards were falling into place for Ronnie to win number 8, but it didn't happen, and we will talk about why and possibly how a little bit later on. But yeah, it was a great victory for Ronnie, 10-1. I know some people fancied that he'd be in a bit of trouble against Jackson Page, but that didn't come to fruition. And there was the odd thing of Ronnie didn't actually start till the Wednesday, which was quite late in the tournament for somebody like Ronnie. It was quite bizarre. Usually he's a weekend starter, but yeah, Wednesday. Did you not find that a bit odd? Like, it was so long until Ronnie actually landed?
Well, quite often Ronnie starts on day one because he's defending champion. That's,
yeah, true.
I think that's definitely part of it. But whether they were trying to space out different players, but then I guess it's partly because of where Ronnie was in the draw. Obviously, him being world number one, it made him effectively seed 2, so he did have to start on the opposite end to Luca. Whereas if he was world number 3 or 4, it would have been completely different. But
yeah, of course, number 5 now in the world after his loss here. So big drop for Ronnie, but safely through to round 2. And there was some interesting matchups in round 2. Obviously, Maguire and Murphy, I think, was the one that really stood out to people as possibly being the match of the draw. We, of course, had Kyren Wilson taking on Joe O'Connor, who had just knocked out Mark Selby. Lazowski and Bingham as 2 qualifiers, but 2 potential world champions squaring off in round 2. And, of course, the 2 stars of 2023, Jak Jones taking on Sejar Wee.
Yeah, the second round was... It's a phrase I've heard Rob Walker use far too much about snooker draws, but in a way it's been stuck in my head. So it was a mouth-watering draw, the second round. It really was. The great players against great players. And, I mean, the fact there was one night where you had Bingham against Lazowski on one side of the Crucible, and the other side was Mark Allen against John Higgins.
Yeah.
That is top quality players. Do you know what I mean? They are exceptional players, and any of those 4 could have had a shot at winning the world title, really. And, you know, I think definitely, strangely, the 2 that lost that day, Mark Allen and Lazowski, were probably fancied ahead of their opponents for the title. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's when you have, I suppose, experience told on that day. You know, the more experienced players, the players who've won the Crucible before, on that day at least, they managed to, you know, scrape through, in Higgins' case, I suppose. But I say scrape, but I mean, it was the most incredible to watch scrape you've ever seen in your life, because that clearance, which I'm sure people will talk about for many decades to come, one of the all-time great clearances, unbelievable, especially made even more great by the fact he'd had a really rough season and managed to get that from at the bottom of the barrel. He found it there somewhere, he brought it up, and it had a classic Higgins double, which of course only Higgins could do that, and then he cleared up in a way that only Higgins can do. That beautiful moment at the end where he puts his arms in the air like a champion, and just, that's going to be a classic Crucible moment for many, many decades to come. Yeah,
and I think it will be a classic Crucible match, to be honest with you. You know, Mark Allen played really, really well in that match, as did John Higgins, and it to use one of Rob's cliches, that could have easily been the final, couldn't it? John Higgins versus Mark Allen, but it was in round 2. And I I think definitely was the highlight of round 2 was that clearance from John Higgins. And that evening, actually, because the Jack Lesowski-Stu Bingham match was really close as well at that point. And, they were both 11-11 going into the final few frames. And that is what the Crucible is all about. And that's what you wouldn't get if you were in a Crucible where it was just a one-table setup and you had an arena somewhere else where the other match was taking place. There's just something about how confined it is, the divide up in the middle, you can hear the noise on both sides, that just elevates the tension of those situations. And, well, as you said, I couldn't have put it better myself. John Higgins did John Higgins things in that last frame, and it was a special moment and one that I was very privileged to watch live on the TV. It's not the same watching it back as when you watch that moment, not knowing if he's going to complete it, but deep down that it's John Higgins and that he probably is going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing. But of course, you didn't watch all of the second round on TV.
No.
Because you did actually. That is when Joe made his very own appearance at the Crucible, watching Judd Trump against a man who we've christened Tom Ford Escort.
Ford Escort.
Ford Escort. Everyone used that. I want it to catch on. I really think it should. He needs a nickname because at the moment it's just Rob Walker going, he looks a bit like me and he's well fit. Which...
the incredibly handsome Tom Ford Escort. Yeah.
You could call him the incredibly handsome escort.
That
would work.
You could, yeah. You could. But yeah, obviously Judd Trump made it through against Tom Ford quite comfortably in the end, 13-7. But that Maguire-Murphy match, there was a bit of an edge to it. And being live in the Crucible, actually, when it hit boiling point, obviously Murphy rolled along a black along the cushion, big fist pump as he walks out of the arena, and Stephen Hendry's giving him a bit of an odd... Stephen Maguire's giving him a bit of an odd look. I'm sure Stephen Hendry was probably giving him an odd look as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cracking. And then of course at the end of the session, I think it was to go 10-6, and Murphy had been 60 odd points in front, and it looked like it was going to go 9-7. I mean, how different could the whole championship have been had Murphy won that frame? Who knows? I'd predicted him to get to the final, so I'm going to say that. But but Stephen Maguire banging on the table and making a big scene as he leaves the arena, and it caused a bit of controversy, didn't it? Of players fist pumping and hitting the table, and people say, "Oh, I don't think people should be doing that." But I think we both completely disagree with that.
I get so tired because it's the same every year, where a player does something where it's them showing emotion, and in any way, whether it's a player smacking their fist on the table, whether it's a player doing a fist pump, whether it's a player going "come on," or even if it's a player who, when they've lost, they're a bit grumpy and a bit unhappy, and all they talk about is, "Yeah, I played really bad, I'm really disappointed." Then people always jump on it. They go, "Oh, that player's interview, they didn't praise their opponent," or "Oh, that player doing the fist pump, they didn't respect their opponent." But it's just the emotion of a great sport, and it just shows the players give a damn, which is what you want. You want players who care. You don't want everyone to be like Steve Davis was in the 80s, because the great 85 final would not have been as exciting and not as memorable a clip if Dennis Taylor had potted that black and just gone,
"Yeah,
good job, Steve."
Yeah, well played, Steve.
It wouldn't be a great moment. We wouldn't be rewatching it. You need the holding the cue up and the waggling the finger, because they're the things that people associate with it. You need that bit of just being a human, because that's the whole point.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all for players showing emotion. I think within reason. I don't like it when a player gives it the big one before they've won the match. So, if they've just potted frame ball, and there's still a good chance that the other player's going to play on for snookers, I don't like that a great deal. Wait until the match is won, then give it a bit of emotion for me, which Murphy always does. It's always at the end of a frame or at the end of a mid-session. It's, gamesmanship at the end of the day, trying to get the crowd on your side, but also trying to get into your opponent's head.
And it's strange, really, because I saw some people after that match particularly picking out Shaun Murphy as trying to do this gamesmanship and being a bit of a show-off. But I think that Maguire was a man who, at one point in the next round, killed a fly and then he ate it. And for a man who, about 10 years ago, he really slagged off Detchuat Poonjang because he said he was a bit weird. I'm like, mate, you've ate a fly.
Yeah, it was a completely bizarre moment. I think that probably is up there in the top 3 most bizarre moments of the whole Crucible, and that's certainly something that I found particularly weird. But he did it, and he said it was very tasty. So fair play.
He just needed a bit of energy for his match. He just saw his chance. Yum. There we go. And maybe on a different day, that energy could have led him to turning the tables and, well, not literally turning the tables because that would be a disqualification, but turning the match around and become the world champion. Who knows?
Yeah. It wasn't meant to be though for Stephen, was it? He did get through against Shaun Murphy, but fell down in the quarterfinal stage. And I know we were really excited at the time because it was Dave Gilbert versus Stephen Maguire. One of them was going to be in the semi-final. Obviously, Gilbert had the agonising miss in 2019, of losing in a deciding frame. And we all remember the interview after where he was very emotional and thinking, well, I might not get a better chance than that to get to a Crucible final. So we were really excited to see both of those two in the quarterfinals. We had Kyren Wilson against John Higgins, and then on the other side of the draw, everybody was talking about this potential meet-up, match of the season, player of the season, decider, I guess, between Ronnie O'Sullivan and Judd Trump in the semi-final. But first, they had to negotiate the path of Jak Jones for Judd Trump and Stuart Bingham for Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Well, Judd himself said before the championship that odds are it'll be me and Ronnie in the semis, and whoever wins that'll decide who's been player of the season. So even Judd had openly said that, and I'm sure it's what Ronnie would have been predicting when he saw the draw. I'm sure it's what, frankly, 99% of snooker fans would have predicted. And it is exactly what would have happened if you went on form, on experience, on past results of the players, on every single factor. It's what should have happened. But it didn't.
It didn't happen. Of course, I mean, Judd Trump struggled all match against Jak Jones. And I remember we talked about it and we said, people are saying Jak Jones hasn't got a lot of chance here. And I remember it was in our Lost podcast, Tom. It was our Lost podcast. I'd said, I quite fancy Jak Jones to win this. And you put your head in your hands and you went, oh, Joe, you are so wrong. You are so wrong. And I can't believe how smug I felt after Jak Jones won that 13-9. And I remember it was a morning session. I was watching its progress from work, just dipping in and out during break time and that sort of thing, and saying, well, Jak Jones is going to do this. He's going to do this, And it felt very much like almost Steve Davis in 2010 when he beat John Higgins. Nobody believed that he would do it. Now, obviously, it's very different, but it's kind of not in the same way. Steve Davis was such a rank outsider to beat the defending champion John Higgins in 2010. And, well, Jak Jones did it. He beat Judd Trump 13-9, and that was on the morning of the day. But what happened on the evening, Tom, with Bingham and Ronnie O'Sullivan?
Well, Bingham kind of turned the clocks back. It was like 2015 all over again. Yeah. Bingham against Ronnie in the quarters. Ronnie the big favourite, but Bingham managing to turn on the form of his season. Do you know what I mean? The best form he's performed probably even for a couple of years, maybe. And it was a real situation again where you would expect Ronnie to be favourite, but I think Bingham just lifted his game. He really, really lifted his game, and he was knocking in centuries. He was doing fantastic shots. Like, there was a BBC shot of the tournament thing during the final, and of the 10 shots of the tournament, Bingham had 3 of them, and that's a sign of some of the great shots he was picking out throughout the tournament. But he just lifted his game and really found his form.
He did, yeah.
And he beat Ronnie at the Crucible again, and not many people have ever beat Ronnie at the Crucible twice.
Yeah,
But
I think
Bingham,
it might even be twice in a row. I don't know if Ronnie's played Bingham since 2015 until this tournament, but it was a cracking result for Stuart Bingham. And as much as I predicted a lot right in this tournament, one of the big howlers from me was predicting Bingham going out and qualifying. And I remember he very nearly did. I think it was 10-9 against Stuart Carrington. He was 9-7 down, I believe. And should have really went out to Stuart Carrington. And, well, it's just amazing, isn't it, that had Stuart Carrington won that match, we wouldn't have had Bingham in the semi-final. That's crazy, isn't it? How much things depend on absolute fractions and fine margins.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those weird things where I'd say Bingham is, especially in the past 10 years, he's become a big stage player. You put him in the qualifiers and he might not be great, but you put him at Ali Pali or at the Crucible or in York at the Barbican, and he's just someone who feeds off the audience. And I think part of that is what makes him lift his game, and just because he just always seems to, I swear, the past 4 years, the best form of his season is always at the Crucible. He does okay in the season, and then suddenly, I think the last 4 seasons, he's had something like a quarterfinal, a semi-final, a second round, then a semi-final, which is absolutely bonkers for a man who has been in and out the bottom of the top 16. But he just has found something, and he's actually had the best form, apart from obviously the title, but in terms of consistently over a number of years, it's his best 4-year period at the World Championships of his career, which is baffling considering he's not won a ranking title, he's not in the top 16.
Yeah.
But he comes to Sheffield, he loves it. He just seems to absolutely love it.
Yeah, he does, and it's he's what we would call a bit of a Crucible specialist, and there's been lots of players like that over the years. Matthew Stevens, Barry Hawkins, of course. I suppose Kyren Wilson would spring to mind of players that don't necessarily win the tournament, but tend to do well pretty much every year that they are there. Obviously, Anthony McGill was doing it a few years ago, and yeah, it's interesting that for some players, the longer formats, the Crucible venue, maybe the prize money on offer, all of that just inspires them somehow to playing better.
Well, genuinely, I suppose, actually thinking about it, all of those factors would mean it's probably the tournament that most players practice the most for, and actually are
true.
most focused on. And so then maybe it's just a case that some players are better at finding that focus and finding that motivation to practice for this particular tournament.
Yeah.
Compared to others, because it's not. There's nothing magical about. For some reason, because Bingham was born in May, that means he's really good at the Crucible. There's nothing innate like that, but it must be something where, for some reason, these players just always turn up. And we say this, and then it'll be, like when Maguire missed out on qualifying and then wasn't there, or something like that. They can't do it forever. They can't do it every year. But generally, Bingham's one who punches above his weight in the World Championships, and another man who does is his opponent in the next round, which ended up being Jak Jones, of course.
Well, yeah, and he's becoming a bit of a Crucible specialist himself. Now, me and Tom have been saying, we're not going to get too carried away about Jak Jones performing well for 2 seasons. He's not a Crucible specialist yet, I don't think. There is a distinct possibility he might drop out of the top 16 this season and not even qualify next year. Now, I don't know how many runners-up have ever had the chance of not qualifying the next year. That would be an interesting stat if that did happen. But you wouldn't be surprised if Jak Jones lost in qualifying next year, would you? And that's what's so amazing about his run to the semi-finals. And everybody thought, oh, well, once Bingham has got past Ronnie, surely Bingham is now the favourite because he is the only one that's won it before. But it didn't transpire like that, did it?
No, it didn't. And it was very interesting because the Bingham match against Jak Jones went very similar to the Trump match against Jak Jones, when neither Bingham or Trump, they both said afterwards they couldn't find their rhythm. I'm not a professional snooker player, so I don't know how much of that is a real thing or how much of that is just an excuse and the fact they got frustrated by a slower player. I don't think anyone can really know for certain, but they both came out of similar things. They both were missing long pots. They both weren't doing their usual big break building. And Jak Jones was doing what he continued to do in the final, actually, which was somehow finding a way to win in the second half of a frame. He wasn't making big breaks. He wasn't clearing up, but he'd always manage to just get the points when he needed them at the end. And it was just clearly a very tactical game. It was like the snooker equivalent of, parking the bus and trying to sneak a late goal in football. It was that kind of thing where he wouldn't take any risks. He'd play defensively, keep it close, and then boom, he grabs to 30 points, he wins the frame. And very impressive to watch. Not the prettiest of snooker, but it did feel like we've got someone who's more in the mould of a Peter Ebdon or a Graham Dott, and we need those people at the Crucible.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully Jak Jones will end up having a music career and give us a little bit more cue the music material. That's what we want to see. We certainly want those traits of Peter Ebdon rather than some of the more questionable traits that have appeared over the last few years. But no, I mean, fair play to Jak Jones. He played very, very well. And to be fair, until the final, he'd won all of his matches convincingly. And a deserved finalist, I think, and didn't get the credit he deserved. Because actually his long potting was very impressive throughout the tournament. And although his century scoring wasn't too high, he would score quite a few 60s and 70s. And people seem to forget that it generally only takes a 60 or 70 to win the frame most of the time in snooker. So, yeah, didn't get as much credit as he deserved. And, he got the biggest payday of his career. I think I'd read something, Tom, interesting stat, that he'd earned £358,000 in his career before the World Championship this year. And he's been a professional for roughly 13 years on and off, which equates to around about a £28,000 salary per year, which is, about average in the UK. But of course, almost doubled his career earnings in one tournament, earned $200,000 for each in the final. But isn't that amazing how one tournament can change a player's life?
Yeah, and that's what the great stories of the World Championship should be about. The fact, we as big Ronnie fans and big fans of the class of '92 and big fans of Stuart Bingham, do you know what I mean? We'd love to see our favourites pick up another title and move up a bit on whether it's the list of the greatest ever or the list of ranking titles or the most world champions. We'd love to see that because, frankly, usually your favourites are your favourites because they're very good and you want to see them continuing to be very good.
Yeah.
But also, what is so crucial, I think, is that there has to be tournaments where other players can break through and change their lives because I mean, let's be frank, 500 grand to Ronnie probably wouldn't do too much, considering the Saudi deals he's recently signed.
Yeah, eye-watering, isn't it? But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this will be a season, which of course we will be reviewing the season as a whole. It'll be seen as the season of Ronnie O'Sullivan and Judd Trump, who, pretty much dominated the season. If they played in it, one of them won it. Usually Ronnie, if he was playing in it, but Judd Trump if Ronnie wasn't there. And it wasn't either of them that won the World Championship, because Kyren Wilson did it, and that is such a big tournament, and I think that puts into perspective how small some of the tournaments are on the whole calendar, that actually Kyren Wilson will be just as remembered for being world champion in 2024 as Ronnie winning the UK and the Masters and Judd Trump winning 5 events, if not more so.
Well, very similar story to last year with Luca Brissell.
Yeah.
Where Brissell did nothing all season, but if you ask people what happened in the 2023 season, they're going to think of Luca Brissell. They're not going to think about Mark Allen winning a number of ranking titles. And Mark Allen basically set the foundations for becoming world number one in that season.
Yeah.
But people won't remember that. They'll remember, oh yeah, Luca, he got to the final, and Si Jiahui got to the semis. I think that's what people would remember more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. And they'll remember that session where Ronnie lost 7 on the bounce to Luca Brissell from 10-6 up. It'll be moments like that they remember, not the fact that, as you say, Mark Allen won multiple tournaments. People will remember this season for, there was that John Higgins clearance, wasn't it, against Mark Allen? And John Higgins went out in the next round. That's the impact, and that's the beauty of the World Championship. And I know there's some recency bias in there. Maybe if we talk about this season as a whole in 3 months' time, we won't necessarily think as much about the World Championship. But that's how special it is. And that, even though we didn't have any of the top 10 in the semi-finals, in the other semi-final we had Kyren Wilson and Dave Gilbert. And actually, statistically, that was a higher quality semi-final than the Bingham Jones one. Gilbert got something like 4 centuries in that match, but still lost 17-11. And it just shows you that it's not all about the centuries and all about the big breaks and the pot success. At the end of the day, you've just got to go and win it, haven't you?
Well, Bingham against Jak Jones in the other semi, I think I sent you a stat that in terms of points scored, he was only 4 points behind Jak Jones. but it's 17-12 on frames.
Yeah.
So it just shows really that people do focus a lot on centuries and points scored, but you can make, nowadays players can make 300 centuries in a career, but it doesn't mean they're going to be world champion. That's just the reality of the snooker tour. People like Tom Ford made, I think, 6 147s or something like that. It doesn't mean you're going to win a ranking title. You have to have more about your game, as you always have had. Do you know what I mean? There's always been, people go on about, oh, bloody Jak Jones, but it's like, yeah, but we had Peter Ebdon 20 years ago, we had Cliff Thorburn 40 years ago. There's always people who do play differently, and that is the beauty of the sport, because otherwise it would be fundamentally boring to watch Tony Drago against Ronnie O'Sullivan every match.
And I don't think you would be able to appreciate the genius and the beauty of Ronnie O'Sullivan in full flow if we didn't have some more mechanical players like Kyren, or more tactical players like Mark Selby or Jak Jones, or flair players like Judd Trump. Everybody has a different style, and that's the great thing about snooker, is that actually over the years every player's pretty much unique. That everybody has their own style, and at the end of the day, Jak Jones and Kyren Wilson made it to the final of the World Championship, so they were the best 2 players of this tournament. So it doesn't matter how you play as long as you get the win. And wasn't that the case for Kyren in the final? Obviously, started off very nicely for him with a 7-0 lead. Ended up being 7-1 after the first session. I know Jak Jones came out, won the first 2 of the evening session to make it 7-3. Kyren pulled off to make it 9-3. And it looked like, okay, every time that Jak pulls it back a little bit, Kyren is going to...
Sorry, Kyren what to make it?
Kyren what?
Kyren did what? Sorry?
Pulled away.
You said Kyren pulled off to make it. I was like, Jesus, I don't remember saying that, Joe, but fair enough.
Did he?
No. There must have been a blackout on my screen when that happened.
Yeah. Well, it was because you were watching it on mute, Tom. That's what it was. That's what it was. You didn't hear it happen. But yes. Anyway, it looked like Kyren was always going to keep his nose in front, but from 7-0 down, Jak Jones almost pulled off the unthinkable. Would you say?
He did. He very, very almost. Like we said yesterday in our sort of reaction to the final, I said to Joe that Kyren won 18-14, but 2 of those frames, one was with 5 minutes with those 2. Basically, it was a black ball finish to the frame, and Kyren won that. And then Kyren won another frame where there was a respotted black. So if those 2 balls went differently, it could have been 16-all. It could have been very, very different. It could have been a completely different world champion. I mean, it would have been heartbreaking because, frankly, Kyren's kids were there, and it would probably be horrible, really upsetting TV because everyone would be very upset. But luckily, it was kind of more of a little fairy tale ending. There was a lovely celebration with Kyren and all his family and his kids and his wife and Barry Stark and his brother and all these lovely people, and it's nice he had them all there, and it felt like a proper sort of finish and a proper champion, really. I think, as I said yesterday, it reminded me a bit of Alex Higgins when he had his family and
it did,
and he won the World Championship, and it was just a really lovely kind of family moment, and we've not really had that.
No,
for a long time. I don't know when we would have had it, but, literally the past 15 years, all the world champions have either been the class of 92 who have older kids, or they've been like, I think Selby had his kids, maybe? That might be the closest one. I think Selby's kids might have been,
Neil
actually.
Robertson. I don't think had his kids in 2010. I think perhaps Ronnie in 2008, had small enough kids, but... it's a long time that we're talking here. And Ronnie, of course, himself got very emotional in 2022 when he equalled Stephen Hendry's record. But it wasn't the same as Kyren. And, I think for me, it was a very deserving winner in the end. I don't think anybody can dispute Kyren was the best player of the 17 days. And although... he didn't necessarily have to beat the best players in the world. In fact, the highest ranked player he had to beat was 13. That was John Higgins. Along the way, he beat the world number 44, the world number 31, the world number 13, the world number 30, and the world number 40. So you could say it's a favourable run to get to the final. But at the end of the day, Kyren probably did play the best snooker, and... maybe in the final he wouldn't have beaten a Ronnie O'Sullivan or a Judd Trump or a Mark Williams with the way he was playing, but I reckon he would have probably stepped his game up a hell of a lot had he been playing one of those. Not to take anything away from Jak Jones, but I think it brought a different sort of pressure because everybody expected Kyren to win. Including Kyren, probably.
Well, that'll be very interesting to see in the future about Jak Jones, is that he's basically, obviously, he's had this fantastic run to the final where he's been the underdog in every single match. He was also probably the underdog on Judgment Day, where, was it Yulong he beat, I think?
Yeah.
So he was probably the underdog even back in qualifying when he made it to the Crucible.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how he copes as a top 16 player who now is going to have that pressure, because some players get into the top 16 and they really thrive and they seem to push on, like I think Gary Wilson currently is doing. Other players, they seem to play very well when they're not in the top 16, but when they're there, like Rob Milkins, for example, had 2 fantastic seasons, deservedly was in the top 16, but for whatever reason, it just seems to put more pressure on him, and he just seems to not have the same flow, not have the same pace. He seems to he gets, visibly very frustrated. And I think part of that is literally him thinking, God, I'm top 16, I'm supposed to be better than this. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he'd have the same reaction if he was in the second round and he was ranked 40.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think Stu Bingham has played better as a non-seed over the last few years. Ryan Day is always somebody that has come to the Crucible as being a bit of a threat. Ricky Walden, of course, somebody that when he gets to the top 16 doesn't necessarily perform as well. So there is a pressure with that, and I think there'll be a big target on Jak Jones's back next year of people thinking maybe like they did against Robert Milkins, maybe against Zhang Anda this year, thinking I've got a bit of an opportunity to get through here. I'm not drawing against Ronnie, I'm drawing against Jak Jones. I'll fancy my chances. So that puts a lot of pressure on him, and I hope for his sake that he can stand up to it and play well. What we don't want to see is him sort of fading into obscurity like a Michael White or a Michael Georgiou or a Jordan Brown, who after their big breakthroughs, didn't do anything after that really. Dropped off the tour. I mean, obviously Jordan Brown hasn't dropped off the tour, but I would imagine that might be happening in the next couple of years.
Michael Holt dropped off tour after winning the ranking title. Fang Zhengyi beat Ronnie. And
of course,
going, Is he going to be the new great Chinese player? And he's still young. He still must only be about 23, 24, obviously. So, frankly, he still could become massive. But really, he beat Ronnie. And then in his next 2 seasons, I think he's probably at best got to like a last 16 or a quarter-final. He's just not... He's not pushed on.
He's not performed, and that can happen. Even Si Jiahui in the last season hasn't played well, other than he reached the final of the German Masters, but other than that, hasn't done anything. So,
well, Jak Jones hadn't played well until the World Championship.
Exactly. But
until the World Championship, he earned 40 grand all season.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with Jak Jones is reaching the quarterfinal of the World Championship, I don't think is quite as impressive a run. It's not one that I would say, right, you need to kick on from that as much as a semi-final or a final. So I think there's big pressure on him next season to not just turn up at the Crucible again and expect to do well. He has to go and perform well at the UK Championship, for instance. He needs to go and impose himself at the home nations. Maybe even pick up his first title next season. I think that is important for him if he is to kick on with it.
Yeah, I think for any player to be able to say, I was 4 frames away from world champion, that should give you the confidence and the impetus to then pick up some titles, because if not, he would have the weirdest career I've ever seen in snooker. There can't be anyone else who would get that close to being world champion and then does nothing. Surely he has to do something. It would be surreal if he doesn't. So I really hope he does kick on and does. As you say, I wouldn't mind seeing him win a title. I mean, hopefully not against some of our favourites. If he's in the final against a Ronnie or a Bingham or Mark Williams or whatever, then obviously I'm going to root for them. But hey, I'd love to see Jak Jones beat Trump in a final or Ali Carter in a final. I would be, that would be great to see him beat another top player like that who we're not as fond of. So fingers crossed he does push on. But also, in terms of the losing semi-finalists, I think I would personally love to see both Gilbert and Bingham take real confidence and rediscover that form a bit more consistently. Because really, they're both players who dropped to, outside the top 30, but I think they showed maybe they're not consistent enough to be top 16 anymore, but at the very least, they should be top 25. Do you know what I mean? They should not be as low as they were. They should still be able to have good runs. So I really hope they both continue what they're doing, because they both seem to be really enjoying it. They both seem to be really mentally well and doing well because of that. So I really hope they have a bit of a rest, come back, and both have very good seasons, because they both played well enough to, at points to win a title. So hopefully they can again follow through and do that.
Oh, very well said, Tom. Very well said. So it's been a memorable World Championship. Possibly not the best standard of all time. It didn't have 3 class of 92 players in the semi-finals like I think 2022 did, but it had its moments and things that I think, as we alluded to in the podcast yesterday, things that we will remember forever. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions, actually, Tom, about this year's World Championship. And, well, first of all, what was your favourite moment of the whole championship?
My favourite moment of the whole championship. It's probably a bit cliche, but literally my favourite moment, when I look back, I will think of, Kyren just sort of being elated when he won, and the lovely moment he had a hug of his brother and they both were crying, and then he had a hug with his little kids, and they were kind of, the little young kid comes along and sort of fights to give his dad a hug, and he gives them both a hug, and you actually hear his oldest kid go like, "Oh, you're world champion, come on," that, and you have
come on, daddy.
He basically went, "Come on, daddy, the warrior, come on, the warrior, Kyren Wilson." His kid basically did that, and it's going to be a bizarre moment looking back now, going, "Oh, do you remember the story of Kyren as world champion? Yeah, do you remember in the second round where Rob Walker went, 'Come on, daddy, come on, the warrior, Kyren Wilson'?" That's part of history now. That's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But Kyren's just emotional victory was really properly lovely. It's, for me, my favourite sporting moments are when you can see how much it means to a player or a team, and you see the emotion on their face. I think that's what it's all about. And you saw how much it meant to Kyren, and it meant to his family, and his dad was there, and I think his dad's not in the best health, so it wasn't easy for his dad to be there, but he made sure his dad came along. He went, "I'll literally drag him to the Crucible if I have to," and his kids were just a proper, Barry Stark, the coach, was there, who's been his coach for many years, and many people know as a YouTube coach. It just had Kyren being emotional, Kyren being happy, his family all the sort of the emotion and all just the joy and the elation and the relief as well, probably, and all of that came together, and that will always stay with me, I think.
Beautiful, Tom.
And what was your favourite moment, mate? Imagine now if you went, "Oh, my favourite moment was when Kyren saw Bingham in his hot tub."
Well, that was one of the highlights, actually. But
oh, it was for me too.
I think for me, for pure tension and pure how I felt in the moment watching it, for me it has to be the Higgins clearance, and I think that'll be a popular choice, but it was just such a moment, and I almost felt a little bit emotional watching it, because I was just like, I've just watched that, and we might never see Higgins at the Crucible full stop again. We might never see that. And what a moment. A little bit like Hendry's 147 in 2012. It just felt like a very poignant moment, with all the talk about the Crucible and the World Championship leaving the venue, and that moment to happen. It was just very special. So that for me would have to be my best moment. On the same lines, who was your standout player? So it could be who you think was the best player in the tournament, or who you think was the surprise package of the tournament. And I think I might know what the answer is to this, but yeah.
I mean, genuinely, for me personally, it's Stuart Bingham. It's Stuart Bingham because obviously he's someone who's a former world champion, so some people might look at that and go, it's not a surprise that he got to the semi-finals, but really, like, considering the season he's had a dreadful season. He's really struggled. He's been wearing Dennis Taylor glasses at some point to try and rediscover his form. He's really been struggling to make an impact. I think his best result might be a quarterfinal or a last 16. He's not had a great season, and as someone who has been a big fan of Bingham, and I was a big fan of him when he won his world title, and a big fan of him off the table as well. And I was genuinely thinking this season, like, oh God, he might drop off the tour in 2 or 3 years, and I didn't know if I'd ever see him at the Crucible again. So to see him back there and see how much he loved being, in that arena, he loved performing, and he raised his game because he was there, and he deserved to beat Ronnie when he beat him. He was the better player on the day, and to see him actually, as I said, kind of find that. I think I said in the preview, maybe Bingham needs to find some Crucible magic to beat Gary Wilson. And I think he found that. I think he found that throughout the tournament and punched a fantastic performance that, I really do feel like he won the World Championship in 2015. And then for a few years, people were saying, oh, he doesn't deserve to be world champion. He shouldn't have won it. Look, he's never done anything at the Crucible before or since. But the past 4 years where, as I said, he's had that, semi-final, second round, quarter-final, semi-final, that sort of last 4 years, I think solidifies him as a player now that people have to go, no, he's good enough to be world champion. He deserves it. And I'm really glad for him that he's now got that on his CV and can literally go, I've got to the semi-finals twice, as well as winning it. It kind of it separates him from, the players who are a bit more like a Joe Johnson who turn up for 2 tournaments and that was it. It actually makes people go, no, he deserves his name on that wall.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, well said, Tom. Well said. I think for me, there's a few players that stand out that had a great tournament. I think Joe O'Connor reaching the Crucible and beating Mark Selby, that's a big moment for him. I think
the only debutant this season, we should say, of course.
Exactly, and I think overshadowed a little bit because so many qualifiers did well. I think it was great to see Stephen Maguire back to somewhere near his best, but I think my surprise package was Dave Gilbert. I think just the way he played in the tournament, until the semi-final, he was probably the best player there. We said at the end of it all, Kyren Wilson was the best player at the tournament, but Dave Gilbert was probably a pretty close second in terms of the standard he was producing, and certainly to come back from 9-6 down on the opening day against the defending champion to beat Luca Brissell. And I think that almost inspired him, beat Rob Milkins 13-4 very comfortably, got through his quarter-final. It was pretty comfortable going for Dave Gilbert. He hammered Stephen Maguire and got to the semi-final and could quite easily have on another day made the final, and we could be sitting here talking about Dave Gilbert as world champion right now, which would have been bonkers. So I think he was my ultimate surprise package. One more question for you, Tom.
Just quickly, I think one thing that really sums up the success of both of our choices is, we know centuries aren't everything, but they can be a big barometer of how well a player is playing, and, generally, the more centuries, generally you consider to be a player who's playing better. That's just how snooker works. And in terms of most centuries this World Championship, Gilbert's top, Wilson second, Bingham third.
Yeah.
And to have 2 qualifiers in 2 of the top 3 spaces, it shows they both deserved it. They both deserved to get to. They didn't get lucky. They had to beat really good opponents. They both played very well, and on a different tournament, it could have been those 2 in the final. It really could have been.
Absolutely. On a totally different vein, who was your biggest disappointment of the World Championship?
This is interesting. Well, I suppose I'd have to go with Mark Allen.
Okay.
Mark Allen, Ali Carter a close second, because I really thought, in our predictions, I thought Allen could get to the final, possibly win it. I thought Carter could get to the quarters or the semis. I really thought they both were playing very well. Looking at the draws, I felt like they'd be able to put up a good fight. The fact that Mark Allen's now number one is probably a sign that arguably he should be doing better than, the vast majority of players at the tournament. He shouldn't be someone who goes out early and watches the rest of it on TV. And obviously, he was against a very inspired John Higgins, who played out of his skin and did play like a player who is up there anyway. So, he did get beat by a seed. It wasn't like he got knocked out by...
Yeah.
He comfortably beat Robbie Williams. But I really think a lot of people thought this could have been Allen's time. It was Kyren's time. But I really do feel like we would have expected Allen to, at least get to the semis or if not the final. But he just didn't do it.
Absolutely, and I think he's now the only number one to have never reached the final at the World Championship. Obviously, Ding did reach the final of the Worlds, but interesting for Mark Allen. I think a lot of people will say that. Actually, I know a lot of people fancied him. I think for me, possibly Mark Williams. I don't think he did a lot wrong in his first round defeat to Si Jiahui, and I think Si played very, very well. On a similar vein, I think Barry Hawkins going out in round one, that was a big shock for me. But I think ultimately, I was disappointed by how poorly Ronnie O'Sullivan played in round two and round three in the quarterfinal, obviously. Against Ryan Day, he wasn't very convincing. I think if Ryan Day played even 30% better, I think Ryan Day might have beaten Ronnie O'Sullivan. And then against Stuart Bingham, although Stuart Bingham played great, Stu Bingham gave Ronnie a lot of chances, particularly in that final session. Ronnie just wasn't able to take them. And I think possibly for the first time in recent memory for Ronnie, I think the pressure got to him. And he won't admit that, and nobody will put it down to that. But I think he was visibly irritated by certain things in the arena. You don't often see that from Ronnie. And it was a far cry from his first round match against Jackson Page, that quarterfinal exit of Stu Bingham. And, will he ever get another chance to win an eighth? Who knows? But as part of tonight's podcast, I did actually put out a little tweet before asking for some of our viewers' best or listeners' best moments of the championship. So I thought I'd read out a few of those. From Matt, who, of course, is from Middlesbrough, put in one of our Snooker Loopy submissions. He said it's got to be the Higgins clearance or Maguire munching on a fly. I'd say my favourite World Championship related moment was featuring on Snooker Loopy podcast, but I was disgusted with my rating compared to other submissions. I think it was Hannard's Geordie bias there. Sorry, Matt.
I agree it was.
We had Thomas Sturk. He said Jack Lazowski versus Ding in the first round was match of the tournament for me. I think that is a very underrated match. It was a cracking match. Went 10-9, of course, high standard. Possibly the highest standard match of the whole tournament, as he says there. Christine, regular listener, said the Welsh Romeo introduction.
That was when Rob Walker introduced Dominic Dale by saying basically, this is a man who's rediscovered his form at the age of 52. This 52-year-old Welsh Romeo and his new French beau, and she's inspired him to the best form of his life.
and in more ways than one. But and then we've got JJ12, is that? Yeah, JJ12 says Jak Jones going for an emergency poo. There you go. That was his favourite moment of the entire tournament out of everything. But thank you very much for your submissions in that. If you do want to let us know some more of your favourite moments from the championship, do let us know down in the comments section below on YouTube, or get in touch with us via email. We've got the Snooker Loopy podcast at gmail.com, or tweet at Snooker Loopy Pod on Twitter/X, whatever you prefer to call it. But one final thing to do with the 2024 World Championship, Tom, just to round it all off.
Just quickly.
Go on.
Quickly, Joe. One point about the emergency poo was there was a really nice moment during the final yesterday where my grandpa said he needed the toilet, so we had to sort of help him get up and help him get along to the downstairs loo, and I just thought, there's a bit of a safety battle going on, so I'll go upstairs, I'll go to the toilet as well. And then I came back downstairs, and it was the pundits sitting around the table talking, and I went, what's happened? Has the frame ended? And Mum just went, no, they've gone for a toilet break. And I was like, it's nice of them to go for a toilet break at the same time as we did. It was really lovely.
Yes, you almost voodooed the poo out of Jak Jones. Is that what you're saying?
If I've got that power, mate, I'm going to use it.
But I thought one more thing to round off this 2024 championship. You might remember we did our Crucible contest predictions in our preview. God. And we like to compete and try and get the highest score possible. Now, this is a site called eventprediction.com where you can put in your predictions for every match of a World Championship. Now, it didn't exactly go well for us, Tom. Out of a total of 1,260 contestants, Tom, you finished in 1,229th position with 8 points. 8 points, Tom. You were very near the bottom. Now, luckily for you, it seems to be glitching and I can't look at your predictions anymore. But thankfully, I did write them down. So
God.
I will be able to remind you of some of your misdemeanors, shall we say.
Yeah, we don't have to do this, Joe, mate. It's absolutely fine. We can.
I thought.
Shall we cue the music, Joe?
No,
we're
not. We're not doing that just yet, Tom. So you had a final of Mark Allen and Ronnie O'Sullivan. Sounds fair enough. You had a semi-final lineup of Ali Carter, Mark Allen, Mark Williams, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. You had a quarter-final lineup of Brissell, Carter, Selby, Mark Allen, Hossein Vafai, Mark Williams, Gary Wilson, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. I won't put you to shame anymore with that. Because it might get worse, Tom. It might get worse. It doesn't. It doesn't get worse because my ranking was 999. I'll take that with 11 points. So I was 3 points ahead of you. I win this year's contest by 3 points. Congratulations to the winner of the contest, who is Atob Janola, or Ijola, from Nigeria, who did predict Kyren Wilson to be the winner and won with 52 points, which was 6 points ahead of second place, which I thought was amazing. So he must have predicted Jak Jones going pretty far to be able to do that. I predicted a final of Ronnie O'Sullivan and Sean Murphy, as we know. A semi-final lineup, interestingly, only one player different to you. I went for Murphy instead of Carter. But my quarterfinals were Pang, Murphy, Kyren Wilson, which will have helped me out, Mark Allen.
That's one you it, mate. Kyren's one you it.
Yeah. Ricky Walden, Mark Williams, Gary Wilson, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. So, it didn't go very well for either of us this year. But do let us know in the comments, where did you come? I know a few people did get involved with the Crucible contest. But I thought that would be a nice place to end it, Tom. But what a wonderful championship, World Championship 2024. I'm sure we'll talk more about it in the future, but we obviously, it's our first podcast on a new channel, a new platform, so we've got to get our main features in there, Tom, haven't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, and well, I don't know which one you want to do first, Joe.
Well, shall we cue the music?
Okay, this is Cue the Music. For those of you who might be new, or those of you who might have, for some reason, forgotten, Cue the Music is a section where me and Joe listen to a piece of music that is either by a snooker player. For example, we've listened to Peter Ebdon's I Am a Clown, or we've listened to Snooker Loopy, or we've listened to two pretty dreadful songs by Alex Higgins. Those kind of things we've listened to. But also there can be a song about the snooker, so it could be, there was a song about Hazel Irvine, and there's just other different bits of snooker, like the World Championship final, there was a rap about snooker and it being at Sheffield by K. Dot, who we're sure is secretly Ken Doherty. K. Dot, very subtle.
Weirdly, one of the kids at school today, Tom, totally unrelated, was talking about K. Dot. Apparently Kendrick Lamar is K. Dot. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Apparently. I don't know. Because somebody would say, oh, play Kendrick Lamar. And I'm like, who's that? And they're like, K. Dot. I'm like, K. Dot? You just said K. Dot? You mean Crafty Ken? No, I didn't. I didn't really say that. I shouldn't. Completely baffled them. But, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe some of the listeners could let us know. I'm not sure we're the trendiest people in the world, Tom. But do you want to send me the link to your Cue the Music over Twitter? And we'll get going on it. But I think you said to me yesterday, snooker Cue the Music is a varying degree of quality, isn't it? It could be extremely good, like Joe Johnson's Everlasting Love. It could be a big surprise, like the Mark Selby snooker song. Or it could be absolutely awful, couldn't it?
Well, I have no idea how this one's going to go, Joe, because what this is, it is a remix of sorts of Snooker Loopy by someone called V/VM. It was released in 2001, and what they did when they released this was they released vinyls of it in every single colour of the snooker balls. So
wow.
They have, white, red, yellow, green, brown, blue, pink, black. They had all those different coloured vinyls, and they had 147 of each colour, which is a lovely touch.
Yeah.
And so when I first read that, I was like, oh, it must be an official re-release by Chaz and Dave for some sort of anniversary. But it's not that. It's an experimental, screwed up remix that Discogs, it describes the genre as electronic and the subgenre as noise.
Okay.
So this is Snooker Loopy, but probably as you've never heard it before, I would wager.
Right. Well, you've sold it to me, Tom. You've sold it to me. Let's
And I've sent you a link to the whole EP, I suppose. There's 5 songs, but the song we're going to listen to is the first one, and the full title is Snooker Loopy brackets Bill Werbernach's 147 Pints Mix.
Okay. As you do. Well, let's cue the music, Tom. Oh, Tom. It's fair to say That is 4 minutes and 28 seconds of my life that I am very sad that I have lost and I will never get back. It's quite amazing, actually, how somebody is able to completely ruin a song from top to bottom. Although there was a particular highlight with Dennis Taylor going, "Gargles." But,
that was the only bit I really enjoyed, was when Dennis goes in four times in a row, he goes, "Gargles, gargles, gargles." I like that bit. And the listeners and the viewers, that'll be the bit that you see. So you'll probably go, "Oh, that song sounds all right." But trust us.
Don't worry, Tom. In the video version, there's going to be a little bit more in there just to show how bad this song is.
I think it's worth also saying that there was multiple different versions of this, Joe, and each one presumably sold 147 copies, which, I mean, we need to record a song that sells more than that, surely, because this is baffling.
Absolutely. But for those of you that are possibly listening for the first time or haven't dipped in for a while, we have a league table courtesy of one of our listeners, Matt, who we talked about before from Middlesbrough. He created a league table of all of our different ratings. We give it a rating out of 10, and then obviously that gives it an average rating, and it goes into a league table. So we have 33 songs already in there, 10 versions of Snooker Loopy.
Does this count? This is a version, I suppose.
This is a version of Snooker Loopy. I've called it the Bill Werbeneck remix. Or I'm going to actually call it the Big Bill Werbeneck. Big Bill Werbeneck.
Well, it has to be the
remix.
147 pints mix. That's the official title.
Okay.
I can only presume that Bill himself was doing the remix while having drunk all those pints.
Yes, I'm sure he did. But just to give a bit of context, Snooker Loopy by the Matchroom Mob, which we rated in episode 6 of our podcast, got a 10 rating from both of us. 10 out of 10. Incredible. I have a feeling that this could bookend the rest of the league table. I have a feeling, Tom. It's just a little feeling down there, Tom.
Oh, I've never felt seduced by Dennis before, but here we go.
Evening, Hazel. There's Vicky.
There's his gargles.
So, Tom, how are you going to rate this? Now, bear in mind, just to give you a bit of an idea, you gave Joe Johnson's Everlasting Love an 8. You know that by now. You gave Let Me Entertain You by Stephen Hendry's Rubbish an 8. You gave 147 by Alex Higgins a 6.5. You gave Every Breath You Take by Snooker Raid a 6. But your worst rating so far is for the Romford Rap by the Matchroom Mob, not Matchroom Rob. That's Rob Walker's rival band. The Matchroom Mob, 4 points. You gave it a brown.
Well, one of the worst songs in the leaderboard is The Wanderer by the band Four Away. And I'm genuinely trying to work out whether it's possible for us to give this a score of 4 away. Maybe this should be -4.
Ooh.
Is this song just a foul and a miss? Is that what we call it?
Foul and a miss. He's hit the black.
I mean, tell you what.
I tell you what, Hazel.
I will give it a point for the fact that I like the fact they released it on vinyl that is the different colours of the snooker ball, and the fact they released 147 of each of them. I like that as a touch. I think that's really nice. I'll give them a point.
A singular red.
And then I'll give them an extra half a point for gargles.
So that gives it a 1.5, Tom. That is officially your worst rating. You've been generally kinder on this podcast than me. My worst rating is 2.5. That went to The Wanderer. I also gave 3 to the song Hazel Irvine. Hazel, and I gave a 4 to Life's in the Pocket by Alex Higgins. This is tough. I think I'm going to give it a 1. Which officially gives it an average of 1.25, Tom. 1.25, which it makes it the worst song of the lot that we've done so far. I mean, it's quite a challenge to find something worse than that, but on this website, Tom, there are 5 or 4 other versions of songs in there that could well rival it. Who knows?
Yeah, the same artist has done versions of the BBC snooker theme, the Romford rap, and there's the original mix of Snooker Loopy, and I don't know whether this is a misspelling on here or not, but for me it says Hurricane Hoggins wins 1982.
Hurricane Hoggins? Yeah. I know it does. It says the same for me. But
Joe, what colour vinyl would you like me to try and buy you?
Well, I've went for the pink in our podcast colours, so it would have to be the pink, I think. It would go well with my Stuart Bingham balls and the John Virgo cue ball, newly acquired John Virgo cue ball.
Yeah.
And
Tell you
Bingham's
what,
medal.
If I ever see it for under a £5, I will pick you up, mate.
Thanks, Tom. That'll be for our Christmas special this year.
I'm not going to be on the lookout for it, though. I can't do that to either myself or you or the snooker community, because if I just randomly see it, I'm picking it up. Otherwise, yeah. Apparently, I've also read somewhere, because I was trying to do some research on this song, and when they released it, the record label released a box set where you could get all the different colours of vinyl in one box set.
Oh,
so
really?
There's some people who have far too many copies of this.
Probably Joe Johnson.
Probably, but I mean, the sad thing is, mate, we didn't think much of that, but we know for certain that if this artist, V/VM, if they released a remix of Everlasting Love, we'd still listen.
Everlasting love.
Well, no, but that remix would be like Everlasting
love, which I did say while we were listening to it. Perhaps this is what the vinyl version of Everlasting Love sounds like, with all the scratches on it, because it's been in Joe Johnson's garage for nearly 40 years. It's been trapped in there.
Do you think?
Yeah. But no, that was a cracker, Tom. That was a cracker. And I will assure the people at home listening, they're not all that bad. I trust me, they're not. I will overlay the current league standings on the screen so that you can see. Actually, we've given quite a lot of high ratings in this. There's a surprising amount of good Snooker Loopy, or not just Snooker Loopy, but snooker related pieces of music.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, it is that thing where usually we want to give everything a chance and we want to find stuff that's good and interesting, but we do occasionally. You need to find something that sounds a bit naff and put that in there as well. We want to cover the whole breadth of snooker songs, so we've got the excellent, like Snooker Loopy, and then we've got this, whatever this is. And I'm sure there's some people who would argue this is an avant-garde classic because it's so different. And fair play if you want to do it. And I don't hate the fact it exists because I gave it a 1.5, but I'm not going to be hunting it out on Spotify. No,
absolutely. That's for certain. That is for certain, Tom. But so that's Cue the Music, folks. One of our other regular segments is Cue the Laughter. So would you like to tell us a little bit about Cue the Laughter, Tom?
Well, Cue the Laughter, the title originated from our very first episode where Joe was talking to me about an old VHS that Dennis Taylor made that was called Cue the Laughter, and it's kind of from an era where Dennis Taylor or John Virgo, possibly even Steve Davis, they'd release like videos, and it was a mixture of like an exhibition, trick shots, but also them doing some comedy patter. So that's what it kind of came from, and we talked about Dennis Taylor in a boat where he finds Steve Davis's VHS and throws it into the river.
What have I found here, Tom? What have I found here, Tom? As he's reeling it in and chucks it overboard. It's a classic moment and classic Dennis Taylor comedy. But yeah, we've took that and ran with it, and obviously those sort of things are what the spirit of this podcast is all about. Of course, today is our big review of the World Championship, but usually this is just a load of silliness, isn't it? And us having a laugh about some of the lighter things in snooker. And hopefully, you know, you've got that from how we've talked about it. Stephen Maguire munching on flies and all. But shall we cue the laughter, Tom?
Yes, of course. Now, some of the ones we've had over, well, the past sort of 18 months of us regularly doing the Snooker Loopy podcast, we've had things like a Matchroom Mob bed set from the 80s that had sort of design, so it had
Steve Davis's balls on there.
It had Steve Davis's balls all over it. It was an absolute treat. What kid wouldn't love that?
Yeah.
And we've had other stuff, you know, like, I mean, Joe, right behind Joe, the Stuart Bingham card that's currently glued to Joe's wall. He can't get it off. Even when Joe moves, that's stuck there.
Yeah.
And that was from one of our Cue the Laughters, because it's a weird bit of merch. And Joe's also got a signed Dennis Taylor. He points just above him as well.
Yes, it is up there. I'm not sure that the viewers can see it. I will try and zoom out a little bit. You can just see him in the background up there on the podcast now, just as I've zoomed out. But yeah, you know, we've also had things like Matchroom trading cards. We've had versions of, you know, World Snooker Championship manuals where we had a look at some of the player bios of Stephen Lee being remarkable for being unremarkable. That always gets me. But I think,
bet he wishes that was still true.
I think the creme de la creme, though, is the Stephen Hendry action figure. Come on.
Yes. Yeah, the Stephen Hendry action figure, which we found very early on, and I still laugh whenever I look at it because I just love the fact it exists.
Yeah. And I want it. So when we inevitably release a Patreon for this podcast, Tom, that will be the first goal. £300 so that Joe can buy the Stephen Hendry action figure and do an unboxing.
Yes, and that can be on the Snooker Loopy podcast channel now, because that wouldn't really fit on any other channel in the past, but now, hey, there's a space for this nonsense.
Yes,
so there we go.
Absolutely.
But what we have done over the World Championship is there's been a few different episodes where Joe's talked about different World Championship programs, like 2011, I think, was the first one that Joe did, because that was the first World Championship Joe went to. And we've also had 2015, 2023, 2016, is that right?
2022, I think, and
2022.
2017, I think, is it? And I don't know. We've done a lot of them anyway, and I've been testing Tom on the top 16 players from those years. He got very close in 2011, but it was a certain 7-time world champion that prevented him from perhaps getting a full sweep.
If only, Joe, I could look in your room and see an action figure to remind me, then it'd be all right.
Exactly. So there you go. That's top of my Christmas list. But obviously I had a trip to the Crucible this year, and I picked up a couple of goodies for Tom along the way, and I have put them in a parcel, sent them all the way down to London, where Tom lives, and via the power of Royal Mail, it has reached you, and take it away. I'm going to put you full screen on the viewers' channel, Tom, because you are now going to unbox your goodies.
There we go. I mean, I don't actually live in London, but I think Joe probably thinks everyone down south lives in London. But I live just outside.
It's pretty much London, isn't it? You'd say I live in Manchester, wouldn't you? So, and I don't live in Manchester.
No, I would say you live in Stockport. You live at 7 Goodspeed Close. Imagine if I actually read out your address there.
I was a little bit worried there, Tom.
I was very careful on the webcam to not have my address here.
Oh, yeah? Because, you don't want all of that fan mail, Tom. That's why it is.
I just think some people would turn up in a John Virgo waistcoat wanting to give me a frame. So how shall I open this? Shall I just...
You do whatever you want, Tom.
Right, so the first thing we have, and this is the thing I knew about that Joe said he got me on the podcast. He's got me, very kind of Joe, he's got me the 2024 official World Snooker Programme. Buy or sell a cart online. Kazoo, yeah, it says on the back. Mm-hmm. So there we go. It's the official Kazoo programme with Luca Brissell, Mark Selby, Ronnie O'Sullivan. 2 of them went out in the first round. Is it the programme cover curse? I'm saying that could be something now. I'm saying
we did sort of theorise that, didn't we?
Well, the champion's always on the front, and he never wins it. So could there be something about the players on the front cover where it curses them? But that's lovely, mate. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I'm sure we'll look at this in a sec, but I'll just see what else is in my parcel. So I've got some little items here. There is it's a WST fan radio. I've never had one of these before. Can I use it next year?
Well, you can give it a go.
I will definitely give it a go.
It does say 2023 to 4 season. I think that's probably because of the battery length, but if you don't pull the little tab out, you should be able to.
Well, I'll be able to test that. Firstly at the Masters, so I'll take it to the Masters, which is in London. So in January, I'll be able to let people know whether that still works. But thank you, mate. That's lovely.
You're very, very welcome.
Apparently, caution statements. There's a choking hazard. So there we go.
There usually is around you, Tom. To be fair.
Where's the fan radio going? Oh. The final thing here is a little postcard from the Crucible. Oh, how lovely is that? Oh, and it's got the Crucible Theatre, and it says, to Tom Magic Mayhew. Oh, I've heard you are a big fan. I am a big fan. What of you, Joe?
Well, it's meant to be ambiguous.
Here are some goodies for you. Love from Joe, brackets, CGS, Captain Goodspeed. Thank you, mate. That's really lovely. I would genuinely... One day I'm going to have things on my wall of that. I'm going to have a big snooker. My dream is to have a wall that's like yours and have snooker stuff. And this will be pride of place up there, along with probably the signed photo I have of Neil Robertson, Mark Selby, and Stuart Bingham as zombies from our Halloween episode.
Yes, of course.
Oh, but I am absolutely chuffed with them, mate. And I have, in return, there will be a parcel flying its way to you.
Flying? Goodness me.
You know, I just thought I'd get a private jet. We'll get it there quick. I tied it to the Crucible pigeon.
Yes, the Crucible. I'll have to try and catch the pigeon, Tom.
Oh, well, there we go, Joe. Look like a little advert for a comedy snooker podcast in the programme.
The rivals. By the way, Tom, a few days ago we talked about the World Cup of Snooker podcasts, and we were, you might remember, we were in a group with Total Clearance and the rival podcast that they did beat us. The last I seen, Total Clearance is about to win the whole competition, so that makes me feel less bad about going out in round 1.
So we got beat by the champions?
By the looks of it. And we nearly beat Stephen Hendry's podcast.
There we go. Oh, look, a bit about the Lincolnshire sausage, Stephen Hallworth.
Yes.
There we go, becoming the 103rd English amateur champion. So that's fantastic. We are going to try and... He's one of the first names we are hoping to get as a guest on the podcast. We have sort of exchanged tweets before. We've not got anything penned in, but in my head I'm thinking, right, I wanted to get like all the World Championship stuff out the way, and then obviously fingers crossed Hallworth will do well at Q School.
Yeah.
So we'll let him focus on that. He doesn't want to chat to us. He wants to focus on getting his rightful place back on tour, which he deserves, and hopefully we can have a little bit of a celebration podcast with him when he's back as a pro. Fingers crossed. So, but that's really awesome. And this general program, I'm surprised how big it is, mate. Like properly,
People usually do say that, Tom.
Well, I mean, absolutely, Joe. Absolutely. You know, they go, "Oh, I'm surprised how big Captain Goodspeed is." Oh.
Yes,
And
well,
when
I
he does
have
his-
been referred to as the Stephen Lee of Hazel Grove, so, you know.
I don't think that's the compliment you in more,
In more ways than one,
but-
yeah.
No, I think you are the Stuart Bingham of Hazel Grove. Mate.
Oh,
There we go.
thank you. We should say also, speaking of funny moments and cue the laughter, there was a funny moment at the World Championship after party where Rob Walker split his pants and had to borrow some pink shorts, and there is a clip of him with that. I'll try and overlay that at this point of the video of just him on the dance floor in pink shorts, and I don't think anybody other than Rob Walker could pull that off.
I don't think anyone but Rob Walker would split their pants, if we're honest. But
Yeah.
I like the fact clearly he, properly goes for it. And there was a nice bit. There was the interview with Kyren on the WST channel, and it basically ends with Rob Walker mentioning the post championship after party.
Yeah.
And saying how I think last year at some point, Kyren Wilson had Rob Walker in a headlock and they were both doing shots. And there's a nice bit at the end where Rob Walker goes, "Oh, it's going to be some party," and Wilson just goes, "Sambucas?" Lovely, absolutely lovely.
Yeah. So only Rob could do that.
Autographs. How many can I get? None at the moment, Joe. None.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to... Did you get any? Have you
I didn't.
have you
I didn't get
filled
any
up?
this year. Last year, I did manage to get Stuart Bingham to sign my program when we met him. But
Was that before or after he signed his balls?
I want to say it was after. So we'd grabbed his balls, and then he signed our program for us.
That's just the way Bingham rolls. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a bit of Fergal O'Brien, and it's like I can take this up and get it as a poster of Fergal, isn't it? They're like, it's almost like they're nice printed posters, and I can just put that on my wall, Fergal O'Brien.
Yeah. Staple the whole program to the wall, just as is, with Fergal on it. I'm glad you like it, Tom.
White.
I'm glad you like it, and I'm sure there's
Is there
lots of little gems in there. Of course, the portraits of the players I thought you might enjoy. I don't know exactly where that is in the book. Oh, it's page 66, Tom. Page 66. I feel like you might enjoy that. I'm going to put you back onto full screen so you can show our viewers what I'm talking about.
Well, before that, Joe, page 83. There's our favourite recent social media moments, and there's a quote from Dennis Taylor that I thought maybe you would like to read out from page 83.
I just heard Darren Morgan saying commentary on the snooker that Luca Brissell has a nice little 4-inch mini butt. Cracker, Darren.
Oh, so which one was it? Did you say
66.
68?
66. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my, okay, I mean...
Now, bear in mind, Tom, these were drawn by children, so careful what you say.
I mean... I'll start by saying that I can't do better than this. I mean, and to be
I
fair...
believe that.
Look, they have captured Ali's angriness very well.
Angry
He looks
Ali.
like he's... I mean, Mark Williams is my favourite one.
I think John Higgins is my favourite. It's He's staring into my soul. Oh dear. Cracker Darren. With your little 4-inch mini butt. Hazel.
Oh, look at these. And there's a nice little one of the new world champion there, Kyren Wilson. That's Judd Trump there. Can you see Kyren?
Yes, we can see Kyren in frame, yep. Yeah, we've got Judd there.
Nice sort of
None of Ronnie.
stylized.
None of Ronnie that I know of. Ding there. Ding.
Barry Hawkins.
Big Baz,
yeah,
the most
none of-
popular Barry in Sheffield.
I mean, strangely, it's Jak Jones there, but he wasn't even guaranteed to qualify.
Yeah.
But maybe Jack's their favourite player,
Perhaps.
and Barry's their favourite player.
But yeah, there you go. And obviously, I'm sure we'll refer to little snippets from the program. I'll let Tom, have a read of that, and anything he comes across that he wants to bring for a future Cue the Laughter, please do. But yeah, I think after nearly an hour and 50 minutes of recording, obviously the actual video won't be quite that long, but most of it is cracking stuff, what we've said, so most of it will stay in, Tom. But have you got any final thoughts on the World Championship before we put it to bed for another year?
Well, just the fact I thought it was a great World Championship. There's always going to be people who will complain because it's not, the top 4 seeds who get to the semis, or because there haven't been 1,000 centuries, or because there hasn't been a 147, or because it wasn't the greatest final ever. There's always going to be people who are going to have opinions that make it, not the best. But I just think in terms of drama and in terms of surprises, which are 2 very crucial elements that make a World Championship great, and I really think this World Championship had maybe not as much drama as some others. I'm thinking about the semi-finals with Gilbert involved, or the McGill Wilson semi-finals or stuff like that. So maybe this wasn't the highest in drama, but in terms of surprises and shocks and unpredictability, it's definitely been the most surprising and unpredictable World Championship I've ever seen. So for that moment, it's going to stay long in the memory. And as we said earlier, we've got a very worthy champion who I think will do both himself and the sport very proud over the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Those shock surprises, but on a personal level as well. We obviously did the daily podcast throughout the championship, and we've had some great support from people on Twitter. So a big thank you to anybody that is listening for your support, for encouraging us and giving us this real buzz of energy. We had already planned to do this new venture on the new channel well before the World Championship, actually, but it really did fuel us, seeing how many people are supporting us, how many people are already getting in touch. And with that in mind, I did just want to read out a quick message from Brian McGovern, who got in touch on our email, snookerloopypodcast@gmail.com. He said, "Hi guys, just a quick email to let you know I'm enjoying the podcast. Keep up the good work, Brian McGovern." And that really sums it up for me, of people at home enjoying listening to our ramblings, and we've thoroughly enjoyed having these daily chats, Tom. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow night when I'm not talking to you, but it has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you to everybody at home for listening, and keep up your support, keep listening, keep checking us out over the summer, because we are going to be keeping it going all the way through the summer. We're not going to go away for 11 months and come back in April. We are going to be here throughout the season to keep you up to date, and we'll be finding those weird bits of snooker merchandise and snooker music to keep you entertained over the next 12 months as we wait for the next big one, Tom.
Well, of course, we will be back, very soon. The next tournament we'll probably talk about will be the upcoming World Seniors, and I'm sure we'll be messaging throughout and we'll be tuning in. So if any of you are watching that, do let us know.
And let us know if you're going there as well. It's obviously at the Crucible too, so it's very special.
Frankly, mate, I'm hoping that Joe Johnson becomes a 2-time world champion and maybe celebrates with, I don't know, some sort of musical release of some sort.
Here's hoping, Tom. Here's hoping. But yeah, and then, of course, looking ahead after that, we've got the Q School matches, and we always pick teams for Q School based purely on people that have dropped off the tour that we love or hilarious names. So do tune in for that episode. That's going to be a cracker, and we'll see who manages to win out of our teams. So that is going to be great. Let us know down in the comments anything that you have thoughts of the World Championship, and who do you think's going to win the seniors, and who would you like to see get back onto the snooker tour through Q School.
Beautiful, and I think we'll wrap it up there because it's already been a long one, and I don't want us to, I don't want us to become the new Fergal versus Gilbert in terms of...
Yes, we need to end it soon, otherwise we're going to be the longest frame of all time.
But yeah, I echo what Joe says. Thank you so much for your support, not only over the Crucible, but anyone who's, been there with us over basically the whole of the last season. Like we did, I think, our first episode of the season, maybe back in September, and since then we've been pretty regular, and there's always been people tuning in and liking and sharing and commenting, like, people like Alok and Ian and,
and Aidan, who came up to me at the Tour Championships as well, so...
Ryan Walker, just all these different
Rob
people,
Walker's brother.
Christine on Twitter, like all of
Fionn,
these people, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Matt.
Fionn, of course.
Yeah.
Matt, all these, just everyone, man. We genuinely do appreciate it.
There's too many to name. Genuinely, there's too many to name. So thank you for your support. We really do appreciate it.
And don't forget, once more, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Snooker Loopy Podcast or at Snooker Loopy Pod on Twitter, because all the numbers there. Basically, we want to make this into a nice little community. We want to. I think our dream is one day to be such a successful comedy podcast that, at the very least, they do a 2-minute feature on us on the BBC.
Well, that is the dream, and perhaps if we can do some live ones at some point, come around and come to you guys, that would be amazing. But that's a big dream at the moment. We start small. We're going to try and get Stephen Hallworth on the podcast, and we'll work from there. But maybe one day, Tom, we'll get Stephen Hendry to sing Snooker Loopy. The dream's not over just yet.
I think it's more likely he'll become an 8-time world champion, but that's just me.
Well, if he wins the seniors, there you go.
Very true, mate, but you'd have to enter it first.
Let's wrap it up then.
Okay. But yeah, thanks as always, guys, and we'll see you very, very soon, because we're going to do a season review. We'll also talk about the seniors in the season review, so that's probably going to come out at some point next week, I think. And then we'll just keep rolling on. So yeah, have a good one.